At 8:20 in Tehran, a woman walks out of a metro station with her hair uncovered. She does not run. She does not look around. She walks at the pace of someone going to work, which is what she is doing. At 10:15 in Isfahan, a university lecture on molecular biology is being given to a hall that is approximately 60% female. The women in the hall have more years of education than most of their male relatives. Outside the university gate, the rules that apply to them are more restrictive than the rules that apply to those relatives. By noon in Mashhad, a morality patrol has stopped a woman on the street and is issuing a warning about her headscarf, which is sitting at the back of her head rather than covering her hair. She listens. She adjusts it slightly. When the patrol moves on, she adjusts it back. This is Iran, a country of 89 million people on the Iranian plateau between the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf, with a civilization older than the Islamic Republic that governs it, and a population that is younger than most of the laws it lives under. Since 1983, Iranian law has required women to cover their hair in public. Since September 2022, that law has been breaking down in ways that no enforcement mechanism has been able to stop. What follows is daily life in a country where a piece of cloth became the front line of a larger argument, and where the argument has not ended because the women making it have decided that it will not end on the government's terms. The compulsory hijab law came into force 4 years after the 1979 revolution. In the early years after the revolution, enforcement was immediate and physical. Women who appeared in public without covering were turned away from offices, refused services, and in many cases detained. The Islamic Guidance Patrol, the Gasht-e Ershad, the morality police, was the force created to enforce the dress code on the streets. Officers, including female officers, stopped women whose hijab was judged insufficient, issued warnings, and in cases of repeated or deliberate non-compliance, detained women for periods of hours or days. The standard the law required was specific: hair fully covered, clothing loose enough not to reveal the body's shape, colors subdued, no visible adornment that could attract attention. The standard as written and the standard as enforced diverged over the decades as Tehran's women tested the boundary 1 centimeter at a time, hijabs worn further back, coats fitted closer, colors gradually brightening through the 1990s and 2000s. The enforcement tightened and loosened in cycles that tracked the political temperature of each administration. Under reformist presidents, the patrols were less aggressive. Under hardline governments, they became more so. The law never changed. The enforcement oscillated around a compliance that was never total and a resistance that was never absent. A woman in Tehran who has navigated the dress code across 4 decades describes the cognitive texture of it, the daily calculation of how far to push, which neighborhood is more closely watched, whether the patrol car seen yesterday on a particular street will be there again today. The calculation is not heroic in her description. It is the shape of a morning. It has been the shape of every morning since she was a teenager. Iran has one of the highest rates of female university enrollment in the world. In the decades following the revolution, girls' access to education expanded significantly. The Islamic Republic built schools in rural areas that had not had them before. Literacy rates for women climbed, and by the 2000s, women were enrolling in universities in numbers that exceeded men across most fields of study. By 2022, women constituted approximately 60% of Iranian university students. In fields including medicine, pharmacy, basic sciences, and humanities, the female majority was larger. The paradox this produced was not accidental, but it was unstable. A society that educated its women to this degree and then barred them from practicing what they had learned in the proportions the education would predict was maintaining a tension that the education itself was trained to notice. Iranian women with advanced degrees in law practiced in a legal system that valued their testimony at half the value of a man's testimony. Iranian women with medical degrees worked in a healthcare system where their advancement was constrained by gender restrictions at the senior levels. Iranian women with engineering and science degrees encountered a private sector that was itself constrained by an economy under international sanctions that limited the number and quality of positions available. The education did not produce the freedom the education implied. It produced women who were, by any measure of cognitive and professional preparation, ready for more than they were permitted, and who could articulate, with precision, exactly what they were being denied. A country that educates its women to that level of articulacy and then tells them to be quiet is building a particular kind of pressure in a particularly airtight container. On the 16th of September 2022, a 22-year-old Kurdish-Iranian woman named Mahsa Amini died in a Tehran hospital. She had been detained 3 days earlier by the Gasht-e Ershad for alleged improper wearing of the hijab. Witnesses and her family reported she had been beaten in custody. The authorities stated she died of a heart attack. The protests that began within hours of her death spread across Iran within days and across the world within weeks. The slogan Jin Jiyan, Azad in Kurdish, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi in Persian, woman, life, freedom, was not coined in September 2022. It had been used in Kurdish political movements for years. It traveled from the protests in Iran to every major city in the world that had an Iranian diaspora and then beyond, carried by people who did not speak Persian but understood what the three words meant together. Women in Tehran cut their hair in public. Women in Isfahan and Mashhad and Shiraz and Tabriz removed their headscarves on the street and held them in the air. Men stood beside them, or stood back. Both forms of presence were visible, and both were documented in the footage that circulated globally despite the internet restrictions the government imposed. The protests were the largest in the Islamic Republic's history. They were not only about the hijab, they were about the accumulated weight of 4 decades of a state that had made a piece of cloth the test of women's submission to its authority, and the women who had been submitting, partially and reluctantly, for 4 decades, and had decided in September 2022 that they were done. The protests of 2022 were suppressed. The crackdown was severe, and it was documented. Approximately 500 people were killed in the protests, according to human rights organizations. More than 15,000 were arrested. Several protesters were executed following trials that international legal observers described as failing basic standards of due process. The Gasht-e Ershad was officially suspended in late 2022 following the protests. The authorities stated it would be reviewed. The announcement was made without legislative change. The patrols returned in modified form in 2023 and in more aggressive form in 2024 when the parliament passed a new law, the hijab and chastity law, that increased penalties for non-compliance to include fines, travel bans, denial of government services, and prison sentences of up to 10 years. The new law was the government's answer to the streets. The streets had said the old bargain was over. The government responded with a harder version of the old bargain. The women who had been in the streets in 2022 were still on the streets in 2024. Not in protest formation, not carrying signs, but walking to work with their hair visible, sitting in cafes without covering, existing in public in the way they had decided in September 2022 that they were going to exist. The compliance the government required had not returned. The enforcement had intensified. Both things were true on the same street on the same morning. The quiet defiance that continued after the headlines faded does not look like a protest. It looks like a woman going to the bakery with her headscarf loose. It looks like a group of university students eating lunch outside with their hair uncovered, moving quickly inside when a patrol approaches and coming back out when it has gone. It looks like a restaurant in North Tehran where the women at the tables are not covering and the staff are not asking them to because the staff have also decided. The decisions are made individually and they accumulate. A city of 9 million people making individual decisions about a piece of cloth produces, at aggregate, a different city than the one the law describes. The government is aware of this. The hijab and chastity law is the response to the awareness. The use of cameras and facial recognition technology to identify and fine women filmed without covering was reported in 2024 as part of the enforcement expansion. A woman who does not comply on a street with a camera receives a fine by text message. The text message is the morality patrol at scale. Women who received the fines described two responses: paying and continuing, or not paying and continuing. A small number covered more consistently after receiving a fine. The majority, in the accounts available, did not change what they were doing on the street. They had already made the decision that the fine was the cost of the decision. The generation that will not go back is not a demographic category, it is a position. It is held by women of different ages, by women who were teenagers in 2022 and women who were in their 50s, by women in Tehran and women in smaller cities where the social cost of non-compliance is higher and the decision to make it is therefore heavier. It is also held, unequally, a woman in a wealthy neighborhood in northern Tehran who removes her headscarf on the street faces a different level of risk than a woman in a more conservative city, or a woman from a family where the social consequences of her visibility fall on people around her as well as on herself. The decision to defy is not equally available across the country. The fact that it is made by a significant and measurable number of women in a country where the state has demonstrated it will use lethal force to protect its authority is the political and human fact that the law has not been able to address. You can fine a woman for walking uncovered. You cannot fine her for having decided that the covering is not going back on. The decision is not on the street where the camera is. It is made in a place the hijab and chastity law cannot reach. A young woman in Tehran who was 17 during the 2022 protests is 20 in 2024 and finishing her second year at university. She did not cover before the protests. She does not cover now. She has received one fine. She did not pay it. She does not describe herself as brave. She describes herself as someone who has made a decision and is living inside it. The decision she has made is that the law as written and the life she intends to live are not going to be reconciled on the law's terms. The law is still on the books. It has been reinforced, expanded, and reinforced with increasing penalty at each stage. Mandatory hijab has been Iranian law since shortly after the 1979 revolution, but the years since 2022 have seen the state respond to growing non-compliance not with retreat, but with escalation. After the death of Mahsa Amini in police custody in September 2022, detained by the morality police over how she was wearing her hijab, the protests that followed under the banner Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, Woman, Life, Freedom, spread to cities across the country and were met with a violent crackdown that killed hundreds. In the years after, rather than loosening enforcement, Parliament moved toward a new hijab and chastity bill carrying steeper penalties, heavier fines, longer prison terms, and provisions targeting businesses that serve unveiled women. Legislation that has moved forward in fits and starts, delayed and revised, but not abandoned. The obedience it depended on is not on the books. It is not somewhere that laws reach. What the state could legislate was the penalty. What it could not legislate back into existence was the widespread, largely unconscious compliance that had made the law nearly self-enforcing for decades. The assumption, held by enough women that it barely needed stating, that the covering was simply what one did in public. That assumption did not survive 2022 intact. Once a critical mass of women in Tehran, Isfahan, and other cities began appearing uncovered as a matter of routine rather than protest, the law was left governing a population that had individually and separately decided, in numbers too large to prosecute one by one, that it would no longer produce the behavior it was written to produce. In Tehran, on a morning in 2024, the woman who walked out of the metro station is sitting at her desk at work. Her hair is still uncovered. Her colleagues have not mentioned it. Some of them are also uncovered. Some of them are covered and are not asking the others to cover. The office has reached the arrangement many offices in this part of the city have reached without discussion and without resolution, a working silence on the subject that functions, for the hours of the working day, well enough. The unevenness in that office is, in its way, the most accurate picture available of where things actually stand. There is no single visible line the country has crossed. There are millions of individual mornings in which a woman decides, alone, what she is going to do with a scarf, and the aggregate of those decisions varies by city, by neighborhood, by workplace, by the particular texture of the week. A covered woman working beside an uncovered one is not evidence of confusion about the law. It is evidence that the law has stopped being the thing deciding the outcome. Outside the office window, the city continues. The patrol is somewhere in it. The cameras are on the street. The fines are being sent by text. The enforcement apparatus has shifted accordingly, moving from the visible morality police patrols of earlier years towards something more automated and harder to see directly. Surveillance cameras in public spaces and on public transit used to identify unveiled women, automated text messages warning that a vehicle has been flagged, and, in some documented cases, business closures for shops that served uncovered customers. The state has not stopped enforcing the law. It has changed the mechanism, trading a visible presence on the street for an infrastructure that watches without needing to be there in person, an adaptation to the fact that the direct confrontation model had itself become a flashpoint, in Amini's case, a fatal one. And the women are deciding, one morning at a time, what the morning is going to contain, not because the law permits it, but because they have decided that their answer to a law they did not consent to is the life they are going to live in full view of the street that is watching. The cloth is optional now, not by law, by the accumulated weight of individual decisions made by women who looked at the law and decided that their compliance was the one thing the law could not compel. The law is still on the books. The obedience it depended on is not. And the distance between those two facts is being lived, one ordinary morning at a time, by women who have decided that ordinary is exactly what they intend to be.